2 long years. That was how long Sergeant Alex Carter had been away from his family, stationed overseas in a country ravaged by war. The days blurred together, each one passing with excruciating slowness. Every morning, as Alex woke up to the harsh, unfamiliar surroundings of the desert, he would glance at the photographs taped to the side of his bunk. There, smiling at him, were his wife Emily and their young daughter Lily, who had been just a baby when he left. Every day, every mission, he carried them with him in his thoughts, imagining the warmth of his wife's embrace and the sound of his daughter's laughter. In those early days of his deployment, Alex kept himself busy. He followed orders, completed missions, and kept in constant contact with his family through letters and the rare phone call. He remembered how Emily had cried the day he left, holding their daughter tightly and begging him to come back safely. It wasn't easy for any of them. Emily was a strong woman, but raising a child alone while her husband was at war wasn't something she had ever expected. Alex had promised her that he would return as soon as he could, that they would resume their lives together. But war, as Alex soon learned, is unpredictable. It stretches time in a way that makes it feel like you'll never get back to the life you once knew. The missions, the uncertainty, the ever-present danger, they all became part of the routine. Yet, in the quiet moments when the action had stopped, and he could catch his breath, Alex would close his eyes and think of home. He would picture Emily in the kitchen, her laughter echoing through their home as she prepared dinner. He could imagine Lily running around, her tiny feet pattering across the floor. It was those thoughts that kept him going. He dreamed of the day when he could finally return to them. Every letter he wrote was filled with the same hopes and promises. He couldn't wait to hold Emily in his arms again, to kiss her, to tell her how much he missed her. He wanted to be the father that Lily deserved, the one who would be there for her every step of the way. But the months dragged on, and the letters from home became less frequent. They were still full of love, but there was an undeniable distance in Emily's words. She would talk about Lily's first steps or her latest milestones, but there was no mention of how Emily was feeling, how she was coping. As the end of his deployment neared, Alex began to feel a sense of anxiety that he couldn't shake. The thought of returning home was exciting, of course, but there was also an unease that lingered in the back of his mind. What if things had changed while he was away? What if Emily had grown distant? He hadn't seen her in so long. He hadn't been there for her when she needed him most. Could she be angry with him? Could she have changed her mind about their life together? Despite his fears, Alex kept the faith. Every day, he imagined their reunion. He imagined the joy of coming through the front door, seeing Emily's face light up as she threw her arms around him, and hearing Lily's innocent voice calling for her daddy. He couldn't wait to hold them both again, to be a family once more. And so, every day, he continued to hold on to that vision. It kept him going through the hardest moments, through the sleepless nights and the long, dangerous missions. All he had to do was make it back, and everything would be all right. But even as he dreamed of that future, Alex couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The silence in the letters had grown louder over time. Emily's messages were shorter, less personal. Her responses were polite but distant. It was as if the emotional connection they had once shared had started to erode without him even realizing it. There was no way to know for sure, but Alex couldn't shake the thought that something had changed. Then, the day finally came. Alex's deployment was over, and he was heading home. He packed his things, said goodbye to his comrades, and boarded the flight back to the United States. It was a strange mix of relief and apprehension. He was going home to the life he had always wanted, but he wasn't sure what he was going to find there. He had been away for so long, and while he hoped nothing had changed deep down, he knew there were no guarantees in life. The flight was long, and Alex spent most of it thinking about Emily and Lily. What would they look like? How much had Lily grown? What would Emily's reaction be when she saw him again? He thought about their past, their early days together, how they had met, how they had fallen in love. He remembered the wedding, the promises they had made to each other. It seemed like a lifetime ago. The anticipation only grew as the plane touched down. Alex's heart was pounding in his chest. His thoughts raced as he made his way through the airport. He couldn't wait to see his family, to finally be back in their arms. It was the moment he had been dreaming about for so long. And yet, as he walked out of the airport and into the waiting taxi, a strange feeling crept over him, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. After the long and tiresome flight, the moment Alex had been waiting for was finally within reach. The taxi sped down the streets, and with every passing second, the weight of anticipation grew heavier. He tried to calm himself, taking deep breaths to steady his nerves. He had imagined this moment for so long. Every conversation he had with Emily, every message from home, every moment he spent staring at photos of his wife and daughter had all led him to this single, life-changing moment. He could almost hear Lily's giggles, see Emily's radiant smile as they stood together, arms wrapped around each other, welcoming him home. His eyes scanned the familiar streets as the cab neared his house. Everything seemed so normal. Yet, with every second that ticked by, the anticipation inside Alex only grew. His mind raced, imagining what his first few moments back in the house would be like. Would Emily throw herself into his arms as soon as she saw him? Would Lily immediately recognize her father, run toward him with open arms, her innocent joy lighting up the room? Alex's fingers twitched with nervous energy as he gripped the seat in the back of the cab. The driver took a turn onto the familiar street, and Alex's heart began to pound faster. There it was, the street he'd lived on for years. He recognized the row of houses, the familiar faces of the neighbors walking their dogs, the children playing on the sidewalk. His house was just ahead, his home. He could almost smell the familiar scent of their kitchen, the way the sun filtered through the windows during the afternoon, the creak of the stairs as they climbed them together. He couldn't wait to walk through the front door and feel that feeling of comfort and warmth. The feeling that no matter what happened in the outside world, this place, his home, was where everything made sense. It was where his family was, the family he had fought so hard to protect. The cab slowed down as it reached his driveway. Alex felt a jolt of adrenaline surge through his body. It was almost surreal. His mind was caught between elation and nervousness. Was everything really going to be as he remembered it? Would he walk in and be swept off his feet by the love of his life and his daughter? Or would something be different? The world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for him to step into the life he had been dreaming of. The cab came to a stop, and Alex quickly paid the driver, his hands slightly trembling with excitement. He grabbed his duffel bag from the back seat and took a deep breath as he walked toward the front door. It was a calm evening, the air still, almost as if the world was waiting along with him. He could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the wind, the chirping of crickets, the distant hum of a car passing by. It was all so familiar, and yet there was a sense of foreboding hanging in the air that he couldn't explain. It was just a feeling, a gut instinct, but it gnawed at him as he walked up to the door. He stepped onto the porch, hesitating for a brief moment, unsure why this simple act felt so monumental. He placed his hand on the doorknob, and as he turned it, a wave of anticipation crashed over him. His heart raced. He opened the door slowly, half expecting to hear Emily's voice calling out, "You're home," or Lily's tiny footsteps running toward him, eager to be picked up and held. But as the door creaked open, he was met with an eerie silence. The kind of silence that only seems to exist in the absence of life. The house didn't feel like his home at all. There was no warmth in the air, no familiar sounds of Emily bustling about in the kitchen, no Lily's playful cries echoing through the hall. The house was still. The living room was empty, save for the familiar furniture, But there was an unsettling stillness that made Alex's stomach churn. His first instinct was to call out, "Emily? Lily?" But his voice felt small in the vast emptiness of the house. He stepped in further, closing the door softly behind him. The sound of the door clicking shut echoed loudly in the silence. It felt strange, like something was off, but Alex couldn't put his finger on it. He walked through the hallway, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease that settled in his chest. There was no sign of his wife or daughter. He thought maybe they were in the kitchen, or perhaps they had just stepped out for a moment. The kitchen, when he reached it, was empty. The counter was pristine, nothing out of place. There were no dishes piled up, no leftovers from dinner, no sign of life. He could almost hear the memories of family dinners in that very room, laughter filling the air. But now, all that remained was the cold silence that enveloped the space. Alex's mind began to race. Where could they be? Maybe Emily had gone out to pick up some groceries, or perhaps she was at a neighbor's house catching up with friends. But then why wasn't there any sign of life? No shoes by the door, no bags lying around. It didn't make sense. He walked further into the house, his footsteps growing louder as he moved through the empty rooms. Everything looked exactly as he remembered it, yet it felt wrong. His heart began to race. The quiet was suffocating, each second stretching longer than the last. He moved toward the bedroom, hoping to find some clue, some explanation for the silence. As he pushed open the door, what he saw made his stomach drop. The bed was made, just as it had always been, but there was something strange about it, something that felt off. Emily's side of the bed was untouched, perfectly made, but empty. It was the absence that hit Alex hardest. He walked over to the closet, and his breath caught in his throat. Emily's side was completely empty. All of her clothes, her shoes, her personal belongings gone. The space was eerily vacant. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, and his thoughts began to spiral. What was happening? Why was everything so quiet? Why was Emily not here? Where was Lily? Alex stood there in the doorway, his mind racing, his heart pounding against his chest. The room was so still, so devoid of life, that it felt as though everything he had known was slowly unraveling in front of him. He stepped deeper into the room, his footsteps echoing off the walls. It felt wrong. The silence seemed to smother him, and he suddenly felt as if he didn't belong there anymore. His thoughts were scattered, each one more terrifying than the last. Maybe he was just overthinking it. Maybe Emily had gone out. Maybe Lily was just taking a nap. Maybe they were somewhere nearby, and he had arrived at an inconvenient time. But nothing felt right. The absence of sound, the absence of life, was suffocating. He glanced around the room, his gaze falling on the photographs that lined the walls. The smiling faces of his family seemed distant, frozen in time, a stark contrast to the empty space he now found himself in. The photos had been taken before he left for his deployment, before the long months of absence that had separated him from everything he loved. In every photo, Emily's eyes sparkled, and Lily's innocent smile beamed out. There was a life, a love, captured in those frames. But here, in the room where those memories had once been alive, everything felt hollow, as though that life had been erased. The silence was unbearable. Alex walked to the living room, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Where was Emily? Where was Lily? He didn't know what he was expecting, but he had at least thought that when he came home, there would be signs of life. Clothes thrown on the couch, toys scattered across the floor, maybe even the faint sound of music or a TV show playing in the background. But there was nothing, not a single trace of the family he had longed to return to. He moved quickly, his mind scrambling for any possible explanation. Maybe they were in the garage or out back in the yard. Maybe they were visiting a friend or had gone out for a quick errand. It was impossible for him to imagine the house without them in it. It had always been their home, their safe haven, their place of love. The thought that something had changed, that something could have happened in his absence, was something Alex had never allowed himself to consider. He wasn't ready for the truth, whatever it might be. As he moved through the house, calling out their names, the fear continued to build inside him. He reached the kitchen, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he would find Emily there, preparing dinner as she often had when he was home. But the kitchen was just as cold and silent as the rest of the house. The countertops were spotless, the cabinets closed and undisturbed. There were no dishes piled up, no smell of freshly cooked food wafting in the air. Alex's stomach twisted in confusion. Why did it feel like no one had been here for days? The place felt abandoned. It wasn't until he walked back into the hallway that he noticed the absence of something else. The smell, the comforting, familiar scent that used to linger in every room. The scent of Emily's perfume and the warmth of her presence was gone. The house felt cold, almost sterile. It was like stepping into someone else's life. Someone who had no connection to him, no history, no memories. And in that moment, the full weight of the situation began to sink in. Alex's mind raced through every possible scenario. Could Emily have been away? Could she have taken Lily to visit her family, or gone on some unexpected trip? No, that didn't make sense. He would have known. They had talked about this moment for so long, planned for it, dreamed of it. She wouldn't have just disappeared without saying anything. No matter how long they had been apart, he knew Emily wouldn't do that. She had always been too loving, too thoughtful, to simply vanish without any explanation. Then, a horrifying thought struck him. What if something had happened to them? What if something terrible had occurred in the time he had been gone? Something that had caused them to leave, to move on without him. He couldn't bear the thought. His chest tightened, his throat felt dry, and his mind raced faster with each passing second. Alex walked toward the stairs, his legs feeling heavy as he made his way up to the second floor. He could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on him. Every step he took was filled with dread, as though he was walking deeper into a nightmare. The hallway at the top of the stairs was just as quiet as the rest of the house, and as Alex moved toward the bedroom, a sense of dread consumed him. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. It was the same bedroom he had shared with Emily for years, the one where they had spent countless nights, laughing, talking, and building their life together. It was supposed to be their safe space, the place where they could always find comfort in each other. But now, as Alex pushed open the door, it felt like an alien space. The room was dim, but the bed was perfectly made untouched. Emily's side of the bed, which had once been a familiar, comforting space, was now empty. Her pillows, her blankets, were all neatly arranged, but there was no sign of her. No sign of the woman he loved. No sign of the life they had built. Alex's breath caught in his throat as his eyes scanned the room. The closet door stood slightly open. He could see the empty space where Emily's clothes had once hung, where her shoes had been neatly lined up. Now, the shelves were bare. Not a single item of clothing remained. His heart hammered in his chest as he reached out, his hands trembling, and opened the closet door fully. It was a gut-wrenching sight. It felt like Emily had simply vanished, leaving behind only a hollow shell of their life together. His mind refused to accept it. He couldn't believe it. Emily wouldn't just leave. She wouldn't have abandoned their home, their family, without a word. There had to be a reason. There had to be an explanation. He stumbled backward, his mind racing with 1,000 unanswered questions. Where was she? Where was Lily? And why was the house empty? It didn't make sense. Everything he had ever known, everything he had worked for, everything he had believed in, was crumbling in front of him. For a moment, Alex stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes scanning the empty room. He felt completely disoriented, unsure of what to do next. He thought he knew his wife. He thought he understood their relationship. But now, as the silence closed in around him, he realized he didn't know what was happening. He didn't know where they were, or what had happened to his family. Alex felt a tightness in his chest, as if the weight of the situation was pressing down on him with unbearable force. He had wandered through every room, searching for answers, but the silence continued to haunt him. It was like his home, his sanctuary, had turned into a place that no longer belonged to him. Everything felt wrong. The more he searched, the more the sense of dread took root, deepening in his gut. The realization that something was terribly off about his return was slowly sinking in, but he couldn't bring himself to accept it fully. He could hear the pulse of his own heartbeat in his ears as he stood there in the bedroom, staring at the empty space where Emily's belongings had once been. His mind raced. He couldn't fathom it. He had spent 2 years away from his family, fighting for his country, and now, when he returned, his wife was gone. Lily was gone. His thoughts were in a blur, questions spiraling endlessly without any clear answers. What had happened to them? Why would Emily leave? He needed to know. He couldn't rest until he found out what had happened. He couldn't just let this emptiness swallow him. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a precipice, and one wrong step would send him into an abyss of uncertainty. He had to find some trace of them, anything that could explain this sudden absence. Turning away from the empty closet, Alex moved toward the kitchen, still clutching the letter he had found earlier, his fingers stiff around the paper. He wasn't sure why he was holding on to it. Maybe he thought there might be more clues hidden within it. Maybe he thought it would make sense of this madness. But when he glanced down at the letter, its words still echoed in his mind. "I've found someone else. I've decided to move on." The words burned through his thoughts like a wildfire, consuming everything. It was as though Emily's message had ripped apart any semblance of the life they had shared. Shaking his head, Alex forced himself to focus. He couldn't let the letter control his every thought. He needed to know where Emily had gone, where Lily was. He couldn't accept this silence, this cold void. His eyes caught sight of something on the kitchen counter that he had missed earlier. It was an envelope, slightly crumpled, but still in one piece. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen it before. It must have been hidden under some papers. The fact that he hadn't noticed it earlier made him wonder if it had been left there for a reason. He moved closer, his heart pounding harder in his chest with each step. He could already tell that whatever this was, it wasn't going to be good. His hands shook as he picked up the envelope, and for a moment he hesitated. What if it contained something that would change everything? What if this was another piece of the puzzle that would force him to confront a truth he wasn't ready to accept? But there was no turning back now. He needed to know what had happened to his family, and this letter might be his only way of finding out. With trembling fingers, Alex ripped open the envelope and pulled out a letter. His breath caught as he unfolded it and read the words scrawled across the page. It was Emily's handwriting. His heart skipped a beat as he began to read. "Alex, I'm sorry, but I couldn't do this anymore. You've been gone for too long, and I've found someone else. I've decided to move on. I've taken Lily with me, and we're starting a new life. Please don't look for us. I'm sorry. Emily." The letter was brief, but the pain of reading it was indescribable. His fingers gripped the paper so tightly that it crinkled in his hand. The words felt like a slap in the face, each one heavier than the last. He read it again, hoping he had missed something, hoping that the truth was not as cruel as it seemed. But there it was, clear and unambiguous. Emily had left him. She had taken their daughter, Lily, and walked away without a second thought. The idea that the woman he had spent years loving, the mother of his child, could simply abandon him and their daughter in this way was something Alex couldn't reconcile. His thoughts became chaotic. His breath grew shallow as his emotions spiraled. Anger, confusion, sadness. All of it hit him at once. How could she do this? How could Emily just leave them behind, without even giving him a chance to talk things through? She had to have known how much he loved her, how much he had sacrificed for their future. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the end of everything Alex had known for the past few years. The family they had built, the dreams they had shared, it was all gone. And there was nothing he could do to change it. His mind raced through all the possibilities. Did she really love someone else? Had she truly moved on that easily? Or was there something more to this story that he wasn't understanding? The more he thought about it, the more questions popped up, each one more painful than the last. But as much as he wanted to dive into the details, Alex knew he had no answers. He couldn't change what had happened. He couldn't rewind the clock and undo everything that had been lost. The pain of that realization hit him like a wave, crashing over him and leaving him gasping for air. He had to accept the fact that Emily had made her choice. She had moved on, and so had their daughter. And now, he was left with nothing but the fragments of a life he no longer recognized. There was a part of him, deep down, that still wanted to believe that he could fix this, that he could somehow go after Emily, demand an explanation, and bring her back. But as he sat there, holding the letter in his hands, Alex realized that it was too late. It was too late for apologies, too late for second chances. Emily had already made her decision. The realization was like a weight in his chest, suffocating him, pressing all the air out of his lungs. His world had shattered in an instant, and all he could do was stand there, feeling helpless. Alex stood motionless, the letter still clutched tightly in his hand. It felt like the entire world had shifted beneath his feet, leaving him stranded in a place he didn't recognize. The house, once a symbol of warmth and comfort, now felt cold and hollow. His eyes couldn't leave the letter, its simple, cruel words replaying in his mind over and over. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't do this anymore. You've been gone for too long, and I've found someone else. I've decided to move on. I've taken Lily with me, and we're starting a new life. Please don't look for us. I'm sorry." How could this be happening? He had always imagined that no matter what, Emily would be waiting for him. Their love was strong, or so he had thought. They had built a life together, and Alex had believed that no matter the distance, no matter the challenges, their bond would remain unbreakable. But this letter told a different story. The words seemed to taunt him, each syllable sinking deeper into his chest, the weight of betrayal settling like a stone inside him. Alex stood there, rooted in place, his mind struggling to process what he had just read. He had been imagining this reunion for so long. He had dreamed of coming home to Emily, to Lily, of holding them both and finally finding peace after 2 long years of separation. But now, in an instant, everything had changed. There was no reunion. There were no tears of joy, no laughter, no celebration of his safe return. Instead, he was left with this: an empty house, a broken heart, and the cold reality that his wife had moved on. The words from the letter echoed in his ears. "I found someone else." The sting of that sentence was unbearable. It felt like a knife to the heart. Emily had found someone else, someone who wasn't him. The man who had been with her for so many years, who had built a family with her, was suddenly nothing more than a distant memory. The woman he loved had replaced him, and their daughter, his daughter, had been taken from him without warning. The letter had a finality to it. "Please don't look for us." Emily's request seemed impossible to ignore. How could he not look for them? How could he just let her walk away with Lily, start a new life without even giving him a chance to explain, to fight for his family? He had missed so much already. 2 years of his daughter's life, 2 years of his marriage. The thought of letting it all slip away forever was unfathomable. But what if Emily didn't want him to find them? What if she had truly made her decision, and there was no going back? Alex could feel the weight of the letter in his hands, but it wasn't just the paper that felt heavy. It was the crushing sense of hopelessness that weighed him down. He had never imagined this outcome. He had been so focused on returning to the life he had left behind, to the family that had waited for him, that he never considered this possibility. He had trusted Emily. He had trusted that, no matter what happened, she would be there for him when he came back. But now, with this letter, that trust had been shattered. The room felt like it was closing in on him. The walls seemed to press against him, suffocating him with the silence. The only sound in the house was the pounding of his own heartbeat, a constant reminder of the pain coursing through him. He wanted to scream, to shout at the unfairness of it all, but he couldn't bring himself to. All he could do was stand there, holding the letter in his trembling hands, staring at the words that had completely undone him. His mind went back to the moments before he left for deployment. Emily's tear-streaked face, holding Lily tightly in her arms. She had told him to come back safely, to not worry about them. She had promised him she would be strong, that they would be okay. And now, here he was, back from the horrors of war, only to find that the life he had worked so hard to protect had been torn away from him in his absence. He thought about the little girl he hadn't seen in 2 years. Lily, his daughter, the daughter he had left behind, the daughter who had been so small when he left and who was now somewhere. He didn't know where, growing up without him. He felt a sharp pain in his chest at the thought of all the moments he had missed. The first steps, the first words, the first day of school. All of the milestones he should have been there for. All the memories he should have shared with her. The letter didn't explain why Emily had done this. There were no details, no apology, no reasons. Only the words, "I've moved on," which were enough to destroy everything Alex thought he knew about his marriage. There was no sign that she regretted her decision, no hint that she wanted him to fight for her. It was as though he had been erased from her life completely. And that was the hardest part of it all. The sense of finality, the feeling that he was nothing more than a ghost in her world now. But even with all the pain, even with the betrayal weighing on him, Alex knew there was one thing he couldn't ignore: Lily. His daughter. He couldn't just walk away from her. He couldn't allow this to be the end of his relationship with her. The pain of losing Emily was one thing, but the idea of losing his daughter was unbearable. He had fought for her before, in the quiet moments when he had thought about her and imagined the day he would return. He had fought for her during every mission, every hardship. And now, more than ever, he knew that he had to fight for her again. He took a deep breath, pushing aside the waves of emotion crashing over him. His mind began to clear, a single thought cutting through the fog. He couldn't give up. He wouldn't give up. No matter how hard it was, no matter what it took, Alex was determined to find Lily and bring her back into his life. The journey ahead would be long and difficult. Emily had made it clear she didn't want him to look for them, but that didn't matter. His daughter needed him, and Alex wasn't about to let her grow up without him in her life. He didn't know where Emily had gone or what her life looked like now, but he was going to find out. He would do whatever it took to make sure Lily knew that her father was still here, still fighting for her, and still filled with love for her, no matter what. The house felt like a prison now. The walls, which had once been filled with laughter and love, now seemed to close in around Alex, suffocating him with the weight of unanswered questions. He couldn't stop thinking about the letter, the cold, unfeeling words written by Emily. Each time he tried to understand it, it only raised more questions. How could she do this? How could she just walk away from everything they had built? From their daughter, their family? And why hadn't she told him any of this before? Why hadn't she reached out to him while he was still overseas, during the long months of his deployment, when he had been wondering what was happening at home? The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Alex had always trusted Emily. He had trusted that, no matter the distance, they would remain a team, supporting each other through the tough times. He had relied on her strength, her ability to hold things together while he was gone. But now, that trust felt like it had been betrayed in the worst possible way. As Alex stood in the empty house, he ran through every possible scenario in his mind. Could Emily have been unhappy while he was gone? Was there something he missed? He had tried to keep in touch, writing letters, making calls, doing whatever he could to maintain their connection, even across thousands of miles. But maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe Emily had felt isolated, alone, and had convinced herself that she couldn't wait for him any longer. But why not talk to him? Why not give him a chance to fix things? They could have worked through anything together. He loved her, and he had always believed that love was enough to overcome any challenge. But there was one question that gnawed at him above all others. Who was the man she had left him for? Who had she found while he was away? Was he someone from her past? Someone she had known before Alex? Or was this a man she had met after his deployment began? The thought of her being with someone else, someone who wasn't him, filled him with a rage that he could barely contain. The anger swirled within him, mixing with the confusion, making it hard for him to think clearly. He wanted to know who this man was, and he wanted to confront him. He wanted to scream at him, to ask how he could have taken the life that Alex had fought so hard for. But then the cold truth settled in. Emily had made her choice. She had chosen to leave him, and as much as Alex wanted to blame someone else, he knew deep down that it wasn't this mysterious man who was at fault. It was Emily. She had made a decision to move on, to walk away from their family. That decision had nothing to do with Alex's absence. It was a choice she had made, a choice that left him with nothing but pain and betrayal. As the anger began to subside, a deep sadness crept in. How could she have just walked away from Lily, their daughter, their precious little girl, who had been waiting for him to come home? How could Emily think it was okay to take her away from him, without any explanation, without even giving him the opportunity to be a father to her? The thought of Lily growing up without him in her life was unbearable. Alex couldn't imagine her experiencing the world without him being there to guide her, to hold her hand through life's challenges. His mind drifted to the moments he had shared with Lily before he left. He remembered holding her for the first time, the way she had wrapped her tiny fingers around his hand, the way her eyes had locked onto his as if she knew he would protect her no matter what. He had promised her that he would always be there for her, that no matter how far away he was, she would never be alone. But now, as he stood there in the empty house, that promise seemed broken. Alex's thoughts turned back to Emily. He wondered if she had ever really considered the impact of her decision. Had she thought about how it would affect their daughter? How would Lily feel when she found out that her mother had chosen to leave her father behind, without ever giving him the chance to be a part of her life? Alex knew that Lily was still so young, but she would grow up, and one day, she would ask questions. She would wonder where her father had been, why he wasn't there when she needed him the most. The more Alex thought about it, the more frustrated he became. There were so many things he didn't know, so many things that Emily hadn't explained. Why hadn't she told him that she was unhappy? Why hadn't she given him a chance to fix things? There were so many unanswered questions, so many loose ends that Alex couldn't tie up. And the longer he stood in the silence of the house, the more they seemed to multiply. What had really happened in the time he had been gone? Had Emily fallen out of love with him? Or was there something more going on? The letter had offered no explanations, just the cold, harsh facts. She had found someone else. She had taken Lily and left. And that was all he knew. He had spent 2 years fighting for his country, doing everything he could to protect the people he loved. And now, it felt like everything he had worked for had been taken from him in an instant. He didn't know how to fix this. He didn't know how to make sense of the mess his life had become. As the hours passed and the house remained silent, Alex began to feel the full weight of the situation. His world had been turned upside down, and now he had to figure out how to put the pieces back together. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't do it alone. Emily had made her choice, and she had taken Lily with her. But that didn't mean Alex was going to give up on being a father. He would fight for his daughter, no matter what. The unanswered questions would have to wait. Right now, the only thing that mattered was finding Lily. He couldn't let Emily's decision determine his relationship with his daughter. He had to fight for her. He had to show her that no matter how far she was, no matter how long it took, he would always be there for her. The silence of the house was suffocating. Alex had spent hours walking through the empty rooms, holding on to the letter, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. His mind had raced through a million possibilities, each one more painful than the last. But now, as he stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the same walls he had once considered a sanctuary, something in him began to shift. The realization that Emily had made her decision, that she had left him, taken Lily, and moved on, was still fresh, still raw, but Alex knew that he couldn't allow it to destroy him. The truth was undeniable. Emily had chosen her path, and it wasn't the one Alex had envisioned. He had spent so long imagining their reunion, imagining the moment when he would walk back into the arms of the woman he loved. But now, that future seemed impossible. Emily was gone, and their family, what they had once been, was no more. But even as the devastation of his reality set in, something within Alex refused to let go. It wasn't just about the woman he had loved. It wasn't even just about the life they had shared. It was about Lily, his daughter, the little girl he had left behind 2 years ago, the one he had promised to protect and love no matter what. She was still out there, and she was still his daughter. Emily might have walked away, but he would never walk away from her. Alex's mind shifted gears. No longer was he consumed with the pain of betrayal. The ache in his chest was still there, but now it was mingled with something else. Determination. He had been through the worst. He had fought on foreign soil, faced death and uncertainty daily, and now he was faced with his most important mission yet, to find his daughter. The letter Emily had written him, cold and heartless, said, "Please don't look for us." Those words were like a challenge to Alex. The pain in his chest only fueled his resolve. Emily had thought that she could take Lily and vanish, that she could erase Alex from their lives. But she was wrong. No matter what, Alex would find them. He would do whatever it took to bring Lily back into his life, to be the father he had promised he would be. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. Emily had made it clear that she didn't want him involved in their lives anymore, but Alex knew his rights. He knew that he couldn't let Emily raise their daughter without him. They were both parents to Lily, and that meant he had a responsibility to fight for her, to make sure she knew she had a father who loved her deeply, even if he had been absent for far too long. But finding them would not be a simple task. Emily had made sure to cover her tracks. She had left no trace of where she and Lily had gone. There were no phone numbers, no addresses, no friends or family who knew their whereabouts. For all Alex knew, they could be anywhere in the world. Emily could have moved to another state, even another country. But Alex wasn't going to let that stop him. He would hire private investigators. He would reach out to everyone he knew, and he would never stop looking. There was something else driving him now, something more than just the pain of losing his family. It was the love he still had for Lily, for the little girl who had been his world. He had already missed so much of her life, and he wasn't about to let the rest of it slip away without doing everything in his power to be there for her. Alex knew it wouldn't be easy. The legal battles alone would be long and complex. Emily's decision to take Lily, without his consent, was not something that could be undone overnight. There would be court dates, lawyers, a long fight for custody. But none of that mattered to Alex. He wasn't doing this for himself. He was doing this for Lily, for the daughter who deserved to know her father, for the daughter who deserved to have the life Alex had always dreamed of for her. As Alex sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the blank walls around him, the house that had once been filled with love and laughter now felt empty, devoid of life. But in the midst of that emptiness, there was something new growing inside him. Hope, a sense of purpose that had been absent for so long. He had spent so much time thinking about what he had lost, what he had given up. But now, his thoughts were on what he still had. He still had a chance to make things right. He still had a chance to be the father he was meant to be. And that was something no one could take away from him. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be days when the pain would feel too much to bear. There would be times when the anger would rise again, when the bitterness of Emily's decision would threaten to consume him. But Alex knew that he couldn't let those emotions take over. He had to stay focused. He had to stay strong. For Lily, for the daughter he still loved, the daughter he would fight for until the end. Alex didn't know where this journey would lead. He didn't know how long it would take to find Emily and Lily, or if he would ever get them back. But he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't give up. As long as he had breath in his body, he would keep searching. He would fight with everything he had, because nothing in this world was more important to him than the daughter he had lost, the daughter he would never stop loving. As the sun began to set outside, casting a warm orange glow over the empty streets, Alex made a promise to himself. He would find his daughter, and when he did, he would never let her go again.